Imagine being separated from the one you love most as a child. Decades pass, but the hope of reunion never fades. Today, you'll witness a heartwarming story of brotherly love, determination, and resilience. Don't miss this incredible journey of two brothers who proved that time and distance can never break the bonds of the heart. Hit play and get ready to be moved like never before. The small wooden house in the suburbs of Chicago was modest but full of life. Adam and Michael, two inseparable brothers, spent their days exploring the open fields surrounding their neighborhood. Adam, the older of the two, was only 8 but already acted as a protector to 6-year-old Michael. To them, the world was simple, running barefoot through the grass, afternoons with melting ice cream in their hands, and whispered promises that they would always be together, no matter what. At that time, the family was a fortress. Their parents, Mark and Helen, worked hard but always found time for bedtime stories and Sunday picnics. Helen often said, "What binds us is stronger than any storm." It was a phrase Adam loved to repeat, while Michael looked up to him with admiration. But even the strength of family love couldn't prevent the whims of fate. One night, as the brothers played with an old puzzle, a storm began forming on the horizon. Helen asked them to put their toys away and go to bed. However, something felt different that night. The wind blew harder, and the trees around the house swayed with unusual fury. Mark went to check the windows while Helen read a story to calm the boys. Then everything changed. A deafening noise echoed through the house, followed by screams and confusion. A fire, caused by a short circuit, began to consume the structure rapidly. The smell of smoke filled the rooms as Mark rushed to save the boys. Adam gripped Michael's hand tightly as they were led outside. Outside, chaos unfolded. Neighbors gathered, trying to help as the flames destroyed what was once a home. It was then that Adam realized their parents hadn't made it out. Helen and Mark were trapped inside, trying to save something unknown. The boys' last memory of that night was the sound of sirens and the heat of the fire consuming everything they knew. In the weeks that followed, Adam and Michael were placed in state custody. They were taken to an orphanage, a cold and impersonal place where dozens of other children lived. Still, the two remained united. Adam did everything to protect his brother, ensuring he had an extra meal or a blanket on the coldest nights. "Always together, remember?" he would say, trying to comfort young Michael, who sometimes cried silently at night. But the promise they worked so hard to keep was cruelly broken. A couple interested in adoption fell in love with Michael. Despite Adam's protests, the authorities decided to separate the brothers. On the day Michael was taken away, Adam ran after the car until his legs gave out. He knelt on the sidewalk, sobbing, clutching the only thing left of their bond, an old photograph of the two playing in the yard. Michael, on the other hand, held onto the other half of a torn sheet of paper. It was a drawing they had made together, a symbol of a promise that wouldn't be forgotten. As the car disappeared on the horizon, he looked out the window, trying to imprint his brother's face in his memory. The physical distance was only the beginning of the chasm that would form between them. Adam was transferred to another orphanage, farther away, and began growing up with an unyielding determination to find Michael. He kept the photo as a talisman, a constant reminder of his mission. Meanwhile, Michael, too young to fully comprehend what had happened, began adapting to his new family but never forgot the sense of safety he felt alongside his older brother. As the years passed, the world seemed to conspire to push their lives in opposite directions. But the memory of a promise made in simpler times remained alive in both their hearts. The years that followed shaped Adam and Michael in different ways. For Adam, the void left by their separation was filled with determination. Each new foster home, each temporary school, was an opportunity to search for clues about Michael's whereabouts. He kept the old photograph in a yellowed envelope, checking it regularly, as if afraid the memories it held would fade away. Meanwhile, Michael grew up in a house that, despite offering stability, could never replace the family comfort he had lost. His new parents, Clara and John, were attentive and caring, but there was a persistent silence in Michael that they couldn't break. At night, he would stare at the half of the drawing he had kept, remembering Adam's words, "Always together." It was a promise he believed in, even without understanding how it could ever come true. Adam, on the other hand, faced challenges that made him resilient. At 18, he aged out of the foster care system without a permanent family but with a clear purpose. He worked temporary jobs to support himself while dedicating his free time to relentless searches. Public libraries, adoption archives, and even social media became his allies in the mission to find Michael. He learned to be patient, knowing that every discarded lead was just one step closer to the truth. Michael's journey was different. At 15, he began showing a talent for music, something that connected him in an almost inexplicable way to his childhood. Whenever he heard or played the melody Helen used to sing to the boys, it felt as if Adam was right there, holding his hand. Music became his way of dealing with the longing and uncertainty. Gradually, he began composing his own songs, many of them filled with melancholy and hope. Despite their different lives, both carried the same feeling: the absence of the other. For Adam, the nights were filled with questions about how Michael was doing, whether he was happy or if he missed him too. He avoided the thought that his brother might have forgotten him, clinging to the conviction that the bond they shared was strong enough to withstand time. Michael, on the other hand, lived with a silent dilemma. He loved his new family but felt that a part of him was missing. Claire and John noticed this but believed time would heal his wounds. However, Michael knew the emptiness had a name, a voice, and a smile. And that emptiness grew as the years passed. When Michael turned 18, he decided it was time to search for answers. He started with the limited information he had: Adam's name, the orphanage where they had lived, and the old photograph Clara had carefully framed for him. With the support of his adoptive parents, he began his own search. Meanwhile, Adam was making progress. He discovered old adoption records that confirmed Michael's transfer to a family in a nearby state. Knowing his brother was relatively close reignited his hope. He began visiting the places mentioned in the documents, such as schools and medical clinics, hoping to find someone who remembered Michael. Fate seemed to be playing with time. On one occasion, Michael visited the old orphanage where they had lived, hoping to find a clue. Just days later, Adam did the same, but the information they gathered wasn't enough to connect them. It was as if they were running in circles, separated by minutes and meters but united by the same burning desire. Despite the setbacks, their determination only grew. Adam began posting messages on online forums for people searching for lost relatives. He described Michael in detail, hoping someone would recognize him. At the same time, Michael decided to use his music to express his search. He posted a video on social media, singing a song about a lost brother, and his words deeply touched those who heard them. These actions would be the first of many that would bring the brothers closer together. Without knowing it, they were inching ever closer to finally crossing the paths that fate had once torn apart. The quiet of the night was interrupted only by the sound of Adam typing on his computer. He had become an expert at online searches, navigating public records, adoption forums, and social networks, always looking for a thread that could lead him to Michael. That day, however, something different caught his attention. On a family reunion forum, a recent post described a young man searching for a lost brother. The description was vague, but one detail stood out: the mention of an old torn photograph. Adam's heart raced. He read the message over and over, trying to absorb every word. Could it be Michael? Hope reignited strongly, and he wasted no time in replying, leaving his contact information and asking for more details. But, like many times before, the reply didn't come immediately. Anxiety gripped him as he waited, every minute feeling like an eternity. Meanwhile, Michael continued his search in a more public way. The song he had posted online was gaining attention. People were commenting on the touching lyrics, some even asking if it was based on a true story. Among the many messages he received, one stood out. A man claimed to have known a young boy named Adam at the same orphanage mentioned in the song. Michael replied immediately, and the conversation brought new details about his brother's past that he hadn't known before. Unaware of how close they were getting, the brothers continued on parallel paths. Adam, determined to expand his search, decided to visit the last town mentioned in Michael's records. He arrived with little information but full of determination. Walking through the streets, he tried to imagine what Michael's life might have been like there. He visited schools and churches, hoping to find someone who recognized the name or the old photo he carried. On the other hand, Michael made a significant discovery while going through Clara's old correspondence. Among the papers was a letter from the orphanage written years ago, with information about Adam's transfer to a distant state. He was stunned to realize he might have been looking in the wrong direction all along. Motivated by the discovery, he decided it was time to search beyond familiar borders. The two brothers, separated by circumstances, were now following clues that began to converge. In a community library, Adam found a list of old events where adopted children from the region met with their families. He spent hours reviewing the records, noting every name that might be connected to Michael. When he found a family that matched the profile, he didn't waste time making contact. The phone call was brief but filled with significance. A woman named Clara answered, and Adam felt a mix of nervousness and hope as he mentioned Michael's name. "Yes, he's my son," Clara replied hesitantly. When Adam explained who he was, she fell silent for a moment before promising to pass the message to Michael. On the other end, Michael received the news with disbelief. The phone rang while he was in the studio, trying to compose. Clara's voice trembled as she recounted the call. Michael felt a whirlwind of emotions: relief, joy, and indescribable anxiety. He didn't wait long before returning the contact. The call between the brothers was brief but powerful. At first, silence dominated. It was as if words were insufficient to bridge the gap between them. But when Adam finally said, "Michael," the familiar voice broke through the years of separation. Both laughed and cried at the same time, quickly exchanging questions and stories, as if afraid time might steal the opportunity again. With contact established, the two began planning a reunion. Adam suggested meeting at a cafe in the city where Michael lived, and the day was set. Despite the excitement, nervousness grew as the moment approached. They imagined what it would be like to see each other after so much time, how the years had shaped their personalities, and whether the bond they shared in childhood still remained intact. On the chosen day, Adam arrived early. He picked a table near the window, where he could watch the entrance. Every face that walked in made his heart race, until finally he saw Michael. He looked different but had unmistakable familiar features. When their eyes met, time seemed to freeze. The cafe, with its sweet aroma and cozy atmosphere, seemed like the perfect setting for the moment Adam and Michael had waited so long for. Adam sat by the window, glancing at the door every few seconds, trying to calm the nervous energy that made his heart race. The warm steam from his coffee rose into the air, but he could only manage a few small sips, his mind consumed by thoughts of the conversation he had with Michael over the phone. Finally, the door opened and Michael walked in. He scanned the room, and his eyes immediately locked onto Adam's. For a brief moment, the world around them seemed to vanish. Adam stood slowly, trying to process what he was seeing. Michael was taller, more mature, but there was something in his eyes, a mix of curiosity and vulnerability that was unmistakable. Michael froze for a second, as if he needed courage to take the next step. Then, with a timid smile, he walked toward the table. "Adam," he asked, his voice almost a whisper. Adam smiled, a blend of relief and emotion washing over him. Michael. Just a name, but it carried years of longing and hope. The two embraced, and in that moment, all the barriers of time and distance disappeared. It was a long, tight hug, one that spoke more than any words ever could. A few patrons in the cafe looked on, smiling discreetly, unaware of the depth of what was happening. When they sat down, the initial silence was filled with glances of recognition and nervous laughter. Adam broke the ice first, saying, "You've grown, but you still have that same way of furrowing your brow when you're thinking." Michael laughed, surprised that Adam had noticed something so small. "And you still have that older brother look, like you're always watching out for me?" The conversation started slowly but quickly gained momentum. They shared their stories, filling in the gaps that the years had created. Adam recounted his relentless search, his travels, and the moment he finally connected with Clara. Michael spoke about his new family, his music, and how he had always kept Adam's memory alive through his compositions. Every detail felt like a piece of a puzzle finally coming together. Adam pulled out the old photograph he had carried for so many years. He placed it on the table, and Michael froze when he saw it. His eyes filled with tears as he picked up the photo. "I thought I'd lost this forever," Michael said, holding it as if it were sacred. Adam then pulled another item from his wallet, the torn drawing that matched Michael's half. "I thought I'd never see you again, but I could never let this go." When Michael saw the drawing, he couldn't hold back his tears. It was as if the past was finally being restored before his eyes. They spent hours talking, laughing, and even crying together. There were moments of pure joy, like when Michael shared his first musical performance, and moments of sadness, like when Adam spoke about the struggles of growing up without a stable family. But above all, there was a sense of connection that had never faded, even after so many years. Time seemed to fly, and before they knew it, the sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange. Adam looked out the window and said, "You know, sometimes I thought I'd never find you. But sitting here now, I feel like it was all worth it." Michael nodded, looking at his brother with gratitude. "Me too. No matter how hard it was, I think I never lost hope because I knew you were looking for me." Before parting, Adam made a suggestion. "Let's visit the place where we grew up. I think it would be good for both of us." Michael hesitated for a moment but then agreed. "Yes, I think we need that." They set a date for the following day, ready to face the memories that awaited them. As they left the cafe, both felt something they hadn't experienced in a long time, a sense of wholeness. The weight they had carried for years was finally starting to lift. Walking side by side down the sidewalk, it was as if they were once again the boys who ran barefoot in the yard, inseparable and full of dreams. The drive back to the neighborhood where they grew up was quiet, filled with anticipation. Adam drove while Michael gazed out the window, watching the landscape change as he tried to reconcile the hazy memories of his childhood with the present. When they arrived at the familiar street, they both fell silent, staring at what remained. The house was gone, replaced by an empty lot, but the yard still held the outline of where they used to play. "It looks smaller than I remember," Michael said with a faint smile as he stepped out of the car. Adam chuckled. "I think we were smaller back then." They walked across the lot, reminiscing about their childhood. Each step seemed to bring back a new memory, like games of hide and seek and afternoons listening to Helen tell stories. Despite the melancholy, there was a sense of closure. There, where it all began, the brothers decided it was time to move forward, together. Adam turned to Michael and said, "Let's make a pact, like we used to do when we were kids. No matter what happens, we're a family again now." Michael smiled, moved by the idea. "Deal. Always together." Back in the car, they started making plans for the future. Michael suggested that Adam come to one of his music performances, while Adam promised to teach his brother the recipes he had learned during his years working as a chef. They both knew they couldn't reclaim the time they had lost, but they could create a new future together, built on the love and promise that had united them from the very beginning. This was the touching story of how two brothers overcame time and distance to reunite. If this moved you, don't forget to leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and send this story to someone special. Your support helps us share more inspiring stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.